I was eating cold ration paste in the forward hold of the Cairo Junction when the Kaveth broadcast reached us. The beacon relay picked it up automatically. It was designed to. The Theocracy had transmitted on the open transit frequency, the one every ship in the passage corridor monitored by International Covenant, which told you everything you needed to know about their intentions. They were not hiding. They wanted every hull in the corridor to hear it. I heard it. Commander Idris Kale's voice first. He was speaking the Kaveth formal tongue, badly, the way a man reads from a prepared card while someone holds something against his back. He declared himself a vessel of foreign corruption. He declared his crew the same. He declared the diplomatic courier Weston's Grace an instrument of heretical transit, violating the sanctity of the passage. Then the High Cantor's voice replaced his. I do not speak Kaveth ceremonial register fluently. I did not need to. The recording of what followed lasted 11 seconds. After those 11 seconds, Commander Kale did not speak again. The High Cantor delivered a closing benediction. The broadcast ended. The beacon relay logged it as a routine Theocracy doctrinal transmission, category, public heresy declaration, and moved on to the next item in the queue. I set down my ration paste. The Weston's Grace had been traveling under Treaty Covenant 7, the Kaveth safe conduct provision that had governed transit through the passage corridor for 61 years, 214 souls aboard. A diplomatic courier run, unarmed, flagged, flying the treaty markings the Theocracy had themselves agreed to honor. They had boarded her 8 hours prior, at the passage entry marker, with armed priests and seizure documentation prepared in advance. The documentation cited Covenant 7, Article 12, the heresy exception clause that the Theocracy scholars had apparently spent the last 3 years expanding to cover any human transit they chose to reclassify. 213 crew were now held at the Kaveth Orbital Shrine at Passage Station Voreth, designated vessels of foreign corruption pending doctrinal processing. Commander Idris Kale had been designated the primary instrument of heresy. He had been processed first. I have been a Marine for 19 years. I have served on 4 frontier postings, 2 combat deployments, and 1 extended operation I am not at liberty to describe. I have sat in forward holds eating cold ration paste on more occasions than I can count, waiting for orders that arrive and orders that don't. These orders arrived in 4 hours. The Sundering Compact was not a fleet that needed time to assemble. It had been assembled. 87 warships were already in the corridor on standard patrol rotation. The remaining 783 were staged at Vorthanon Station, where they had been sitting for 6 weeks, because the Office of Fleet Intelligence had assessed the Theocracy's expanded Article 12 interpretation 17 days before the Weston's Grace transited, and had concluded that the Safe Conduct Covenant was no longer functioning as written. They had sent the courier anyway. That is a separate matter, and not mine to address here. What I can tell you is this. The Sundering Compact did not scramble. It did not rush. 870 warships moved from Vorthon Station in formation order, at standard cruise, which is a speed that carries a specific message. Rushing implies uncertainty about the outcome. The Compact was not uncertain. My fire team was attached to the Compact's ground element. 48 Marine detachments distributed across the lead hulls, each assigned a specific installation on the target list. The list had 34 entries, 34 Kaveth Theocracy orbital holdings in the passage corridor, transit shrines, doctrinal relay stations, the 3 garrison platforms at the corridor's inner nodes, the Theocracy's commercial licensing hub at Voreth, and Conclave Station Kaveth Prime, the Theocracy's administrative and doctrinal seat in the corridor, 14 kilometers of habitat ring and docking array, home to the High Cantor's chamber and the Theocracy's full ecclesiastical council. My team was assigned entry 34. The Compact reached the passage entry marker at hour 19. The Theocracy broadcast a challenge on the diplomatic frequency. Compact Fleet Command did not respond on the diplomatic frequency. It responded on the transit beacon frequency, the same open channel the Theocracy had used for Commander Kale's execution, and read the full designation, crew manifest, and registry number of the Weston's Grace, followed by the names of her 214 crew members, in alphabetical order, by last name. It took 11 minutes to read all 214 names. Then Compact Fleet Command transmitted the target list All 34 entries, in order, beginning with Entry 1. Entry 1 was the transit shrine at the passage entry marker. The shrine was destroyed before the transmission of the target list was complete. What followed was not a battle. I want to be precise about this, because imprecision would do a disservice to what the compact actually accomplished. A battle implies two forces in opposition, each capable of affecting the other's course. The Kaveth Theocracy held 7 armed platform installations in the corridor. All 7 were on the target list. All 7 were engaged within the first 4 hours. None of them degraded the compact's formation. The Theocracy's doctrinal vessels, 4 ceremonial warships crewed by ordained combat clergy, sortied from Voreth Station and were removed from the engagement before they reached firing range. Installations 1 through 33 fell in sequence, over the course of 11 hours. After each one, Compact Fleet Command transmitted the installation's designation on the transit beacon frequency, marked as destroyed, and read the next name from the list, continuing through the crew manifest of the Weston's Grace, 1 name per installation, until the list was exhausted at Entry 26. After Entry 26, they read Commander Kale's name once more. Then they continued to Entry 33 in silence. My team boarded Conclave Station Kaveth Prime at hour 29. Breach entry, Section 4 of the outer docking ring. No resistance at the breach point. We moved through the transit corridors toward the ecclesiastical administration level, where the High Cantor's chamber and the council floor were located. The station's population, doctrinal staff, administrative clergy, support personnel, had been directed to the station's safe assembly points by the compact's prior transmission, which had informed them, in Kaveth ceremonial register and in the common trade tongue, that the station would be evacuated before its decommissioning, and that any personnel remaining in restricted areas, after the 20-minute warning, would be considered to have declined evacuation. The Theocracy's people, whatever their doctrine, are not in the main suicidal. The corridors were empty. We reached the High Cantor's chamber 11 minutes after breach. The chamber door was sealed. Standard Kaveth pneumatic lock, rated for internal pressure variance, not for a marine breach charge. We opened it in 4 seconds. The High Cantor was present. 2 doctrinal advisors, 1 armed ceremonial guard who had apparently not received the memo about declined evacuations, and who made a decision that I will not elaborate on further. The High Cantor was an old man, smaller than I had expected, which I recognize is an irrelevant observation. He wore the full vestment of his office, the layered ivory and copper ceremonial robes, the chain of doctrinal seals across his chest, the reading cap. He was standing at the center of the chamber, not seated, which I took to mean he had made a deliberate choice about how this moment would find him. He looked at us. He looked at me specifically, which I attribute to the fact that I was in front. He began to speak. The formal Kaveth ceremonial register, the same register I had heard in the broadcast. He was, I believe, delivering a doctrinal statement of some kind, a declaration, a condemnation, a benediction over whatever he understood was about to happen. His voice was steady. I will grant him that. I let him finish. Then I told him, in the common trade tongue, that the station was decommissioned and that he was to proceed to the evacuation point in Section 7, where a compact transport was waiting. I told him this clearly, at normal speaking volume, once. He stared at me. I told him again. He went. We completed our sweep of the chamber, confirmed the station's command systems were inoperative, and relayed clearance to the compact flagship. 22 minutes later, the last evacuation transport cleared the station's docking ring. 40 minutes after that, Conclave Station Kaveth Prime was struck by the compact's demolition element and removed from the registry. Compact Fleet Command transmitted the station's designation on the transit beacon frequency. Destroyed. Then it transmitted one final message on the same channel, a message addressed to every hull in the corridor and every faction monitoring the corridor's beacon network. The transit covenant is in effect. The passage is open. The safe conduct provisions apply to all flagged vessels as written. Any violation will be processed on the same timeline, by the same method, at the same scale. Then the channel closed. We recovered the crew of the Weston's Grace from Voreth Station at hour 31 213 people. They were alive. They had been held in the station's doctrinal processing wards for 29 hours, in conditions I will describe as deliberate and systematic, which is as much precision as I intend to apply to that subject in this account. They were alive. I stood at the transport bay door as they came aboard, one by one. I did not count them out loud. I did not need to. I knew the number. The last one through the door was a young ensign, maybe 22 years old, still wearing the Weston's Grace duty patch on his left sleeve. He stopped just inside the transport bay and looked at me, and his face did a thing that faces do when the thing that has been holding them together for a very long time is no longer required. I did not say anything. There was nothing useful to say. The transport bay door sealed behind him. We lifted off. The passage corridor held no Kaveth Theocracy installations anymore. It held the Compact's patrol formation, and the transit beacon on the open frequency, and the names of 214 people, still in the log, exactly where they had been read. That was the answer. Not one word more, not one word less.